morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, another detailed forecast update coming your way. I've got a lot to be getting through today. We're going to be talking about a rainfall event that's going to unfold over the northeast of New South Wales and the southeast of Queensland. We'll recap on that one that's just flooded parts of New South Wales. We'll talk about some showers and storms across the northern parts of Australia, gives far north Queensland a bit of love up there, and talk about some thunderstorm outbreaks stretching across Western Australia over into New South Wales. So all of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. Your support lately has been greatly appreciated. So we're going to start things off over in New South Wales and Queensland, where you can see some heavy rain has been reported over the last 24 hours, up to 95mm outside of Thredbo Top Station. So some very heavy falls across the southeast of New South Wales, but now the rainfall from this low pressure area is going to be swept up into the northeast of the state, and that's where we're going to be seeing some really heavy falls over the next 3 or so days. So you can see here on the satellite picture there is a cloud stream creeping across Queensland and into New South Wales. It's being pushed along by a high pressure system over in the Great Australian Bight, and a low pressure system associated with this system currently over central New South Wales. And you'll see it better on the rainfall forecast here, with rain and the potential for snow across some of the high peaks of New South Wales apparent throughout the course of today. And this rainfall is only expected to be light at the heaviest. It will be moderate. Sydney can expect up towards 15mm throughout the course of today, potentially a little bit more up towards Newcastle and Taree, and the potential for storms later on this afternoon outside of Tamworth, Moree and Lightning Ridge. Again, they will be sporadic and hard to predict, but there could be some isolated pockets of heavier rainfall up there. We're also talking about a few showers and storms up into the southeast of Queensland, as far north and as far out as Roma and Rockhampton, or inland from Rockhampton. Rockhampton not expecting anything in the way of rainfall and not around it either, but we could still be seeing some showers and storms up there later on tonight and into early tomorrow morning. Now, the low pressure system associated with this weather front is going to develop offshore from Brisbane and the Gold Coast sometime early tomorrow morning on Friday. This low pressure system here is going to be funneling ashore quite a lot of rainfall, and just from tonight into early tomorrow morning we're going to be seeing the potential for up to 100mm falling around Lismore, Coffs Harbour, Cape Barra and that sort of area. The heavy falls will stop once you get up towards the Gold Coast and Coomera. Brisbane can only expect about 30 or 40mm over the next 36 hours or so, and potentially up to 60mm over the next 72 hours from this weather event. But this low pressure system, once it gets itself running Friday night into Saturday morning, it will funnel about 12 hours of moderate to heavy rainfall ashore Friday night into early Saturday morning, stopping by Saturday around lunchtime or early afternoon, potentially a little bit later than that, actually closer towards Saturday evening and night. But we will be seeing some isolated heavy falls around Coffs Harbour, Grafton and then inland towards Airborne and some of the communities out there that would do typically receive some very high rainfall accumulations. But we could be talking about a couple of hours of 30mm an hour plus, potentially more than that. So we're really looking out for some pretty heavy rainfall at this time, and some pretty heavy falls as well around Grafton, Lismore, also possible from showers and storms streaming ashore. The proximity of this low pressure system to the coast is going to mean that there's going to be elevated wave heights as well, and the potential for coastal inundation on the high tide around the Gold Coast and Brisbane, just because of the low pressure system's nature. So again, make sure Saturday night when the high tide does come through, make sure you are playing it safe around the coast. Don't do any shore-based activities from Friday right through to about Monday until this low pressure system clears out properly, because coastal conditions will be hazardous during that entire time. Now, I'm going to break the rainfall down pretty much day by day from this weather event here, because I really want to give everyone a bit of an understanding about the complex nature of this system here. It's straightforward, but it is going to be a pretty complex weather system once it all unfolds. So throughout the course of today until midnight tonight, we're expecting 50mm to fall around Taree, Newcastle, that sort of area, and up to 20mm around Sydney and Wollongong and locations south. That's just going to be that light to moderate rainfall that's streaming ashore today. Nothing too crazy, stuff that they are used to up there, not really worth talking about. Now, Friday is when the first round of moderate to heavy rainfall is going to get itself around Coffs Harbour. Sometime Friday morning, you'll be seeing rainfall accumulations around Coffs Harbour spike up to about 50mm, I would imagine, before the 9 a.m. on Friday. Lismore potentially up to 30mm, Yamba and Grafton as well, between 10 and 30mm up there. But it's going to be Friday night into Saturday and then into early Sunday morning over a 36-hour period when this rainfall really does pipe up. In just that time alone, we're going to be talking about rainfall accumulations up to 150mm from the second round of heavy rainfall that's going to stream ashore up around Nambucca Heads and Coffs Harbour. The rainfall there up to 150, maybe 160mm. Now, that is heavy stuff, and over a 36-hour period, the chance of flooding will be elevated up there. I would certainly expect some minor flooding in some of the rivers up there streaming into the coast. I would not be surprised if we saw moderate riverine flooding as well, just with the heavy nature of the rainfall, and a severe weather warning no doubt will be issued later today or into early tomorrow morning from the Bureau of Meteorology. This is some heavy rainfall and certainly something to be taking seriously. Lismore and Yamba expecting up to 100 millimetres, Grafton potentially 120 millimetres of rainfall, so some heavy stuff expected there. But the Gold Coast and Brisbane, as I mentioned earlier on the video, missing out more or less. The Gold Coast get about 15-20 millimetres or so, same deal with Coomera and inland towards Mount Tamborine, but Brisbane only expecting a couple of millimetres up there in the Sunshine Coast, negligible amounts of rainfall there. And the rainfall, as with all weather events similar to this, it doesn't penetrate inland, does not get itself past the mountains, so communities such as Armidale, which can expect a few drops, and Tamworth, which is expecting no rainfall, will be left disappointed from this weather event in terms of a rainfall perspective. But yeah, over a 36-hour period, this is some heavy rainfall, and if we do take a look at the drought monitoring map up here, we do have above average soil moisture values across much of New South Wales northeast, and they're just going to be elevated by this weather event here, so flooding is expected at this time with soil moisture values up towards 100% up there. So again, just make sure you are taking things very easy around rivers. Probably a good opportunity to spend an inside day, I guess, this weekend, or Friday at least, an inside day on Saturday watching the grand final, because yeah, it's going to be some pretty unpleasant weather and could be severe at times. And overall from this weather event here, from now until Saturday night, just over that 2.5 day period, we could be seeing rainfall accumulations to Rigo and Coffs Harbour up towards 220 millimetres. So some heavy stuff is expected, certainly something worth talking about. And I would like to say there is great uncertainty around this weather system, and I'd like to just give you an example that the Bureau of Meteorology has some pretty low rainfall accumulations expected on the lower end of the spectrum and some pretty high rainfall accumulations expected on the higher end of the spectrum. In fact, Coffs Harbour can expect between 10 and 110 millimetres from this weather event here, which is a massive scope of uncertainty. The Bureau of Meteorology is very uncertain on this system. I'm quite certain now on what's going to be happening. I think that the forecast that I've just given is going to be very accurate. It will play out as I have said, this weather event. But again, yesterday I was very uncertain with this system. There was a massive downtrend in the rainfall, and I also do expect there to be places that miss out, not completely, but miss out in terms of 200 millimetres. They might only pick up 50 millimetres somewhere along the northeast here. So the rainfall still does have a wide scope of uncertainty here, but I've given you all of the information necessary to stay safe in a weather event like this. Maximum rainfall accumulations shouldn't exceed 250 millimetres before Sunday from now. Whew, that is a long-winded forecast for a small corner of the nation, and we're not even covering southeastern Queensland really, but I will break things down a little bit more in the tropics. We will just go and show far north Queensland a little bit of love. You can see hardly any rainfall expected into the middle parts of next week, when the showers are expected to pipe up again sometime Thursday or Friday. But again, rainfall there looking really dry, and they're moving into a dry period right now, and under the influence of some bushfires up there, they do desperately need the rainfall. You can already start to see soil moisture values really drying out. They're still above average across much of far north Queensland, but they are starting to dry out now in time for the wet season, which I guess is good news, but they do need the rainfall up there just to help with the firefighting efforts, because there are some fires that are now starting to burn a little bit more out of hand at this time. And same story for much of Queensland. They do really need and want the rainfall at this time, and even for parts of New South Wales as well, the rainfall will be welcome. And while we do keep on the eastern part of the nation, we'll talk about Victoria before we go over west and talk about Western Australia. I've got to give that grand final forecast again now. I know with the forecast that I gave yesterday, everyone was holding out, making sure that nothing would change, and I'm very pleased to report that under the influence of a strong high-pressure system, it is going to be a fine and sunny day where we're hopefully going to watch Brisbane wallop the Swans over in Melbourne. It's going to be a fantastic day indeed. The weather, a fine sunny top of 19 degrees expected for Melbourne, could crack 20 degrees in one or two locations, so it could be a rather warm day across the north of Victoria for this time of the year at least, but it is going to be a fine day in September for the big game to occur. A cold front will sweep through much of Victoria throughout the course of Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, so the celebrations might be a little bit wet on Sunday, hopefully for Brisbane, but by then the dry weather would have returned to Brisbane, so fantastic weather up there. Sydney, however, looking rather miserable on Sunday from the morning onwards because of the rainfall that's going to be streaming ashore there. But in fact, for much of the eastern seaboard, with the exception of that low pressure system offshore from Queensland southeast, which will be plaguing areas between Brisbane and Taree with rainfall, we are expecting a pretty fine day indeed. So it is going to be a pretty good weather forecast. Definitely the best grand final weather forecast for quite a number of years. It is looking absolutely fantastic for the big game. All right, now let's move over to the west of Western Australia. We've got a lot to be talking about here. We do have a cold front that's approaching the southwest coast this time, and that's going to be dragging in some pretty warm air. In fact, Perth expecting to go close to 30 degrees for one of the first times this warm season. So we will be seeing things warm up quite substantially across Perth and much of the southwest as well. I'd not be surprised if one or two wheat belt communities tickled 30 degrees or rose above 30 degrees throughout the course of today. That would be great to see. I mean, I'm really hanging out for some of these hot days, and the weather has been fantastic the last couple of weeks. So again, it is absolutely great to see. We could be seeing some showers and storms pop up in the wheat belt as well later on today. They will be east of a line between York down towards Katanning and further north of communities around Corrigin and Hyde, and that's where the highest chance of thunderstorms are. But we could also see some storms fire up around the Mount Barker, Katanning sort of area. Not expecting anything too much in terms of rainfall, just a couple of millimetres here and there, potentially up to 15 millimetres in some of the heaviest of thunderstorms. And these storms should remain non-severe as well. We could see some small hailstones. Just taking a look at the upper level environment earlier on before I made this video, the conditions do look okay for potentially severe thunderstorms, but you will have to get pretty far north into the goldfields and even parts of the Murchison and the Gascoyne for that to be a risk before this cold front moves through early tomorrow morning, bringing up towards 15 millimetres of rainfall for some parts of the southwest and up to 5 millimetres of rain for Perth. And we will break that down for you in greater detail right now. You can see rainfall accumulations are not expected to be too high, but again, there's a pretty good widespread above sort of 5 millimetres across much of the Perth coastal regions, the lower west, the southwest, and even inland towards the goldfields and the Gascoyne as well. Under the influence of these thunderstorms, we could be seeing some isolated pockets of heavy rainfall accumulations, which is great to see. Now, as this weather system sweeps through on Friday afternoon, it's going to fire up a severe thunderstorm outbreak out in the goldfields and parts of the south interior, very remote corner of Western Australia. But if you are travelling or you do reside in this corner of Western Australia, just keep your eyes out for potentially severe thunderstorms with damaging winds, heavy rainfall, and large hailstones on Friday afternoon. The warm weather is going to be providing some prime conditions for thunderstorms to develop out there before they sweep into South Australia early Saturday morning and even into parts of the Northern Territory by Saturday mid-morning. This cold front will then continue to sweep through South Australia throughout Saturday and then go on to influence Victoria, as we discussed just a few minutes ago. But yeah, it looks like we're starting to see some thunderstorms really fire up on the radar, and that boils me back to what we talked about yesterday, is with these fronts crossing the central parts of Australia and then getting themselves over into New South Wales and Queensland. It's only going to be a couple of months now until they really do start firing up some pretty dangerous severe thunderstorms. We're already starting to see signals of it. You can see the cold front that swept through Western Australia, South Australia and Victoria. By Monday morning, we're seeing it move through parts of New South Wales and potentially sparking up some thunderstorms in its wake across the northeast of the state under the influence of some warm temperatures and rather unstable air between low pressure ridges and high pressure systems up there. But yeah, we're going to have to watch the weather very closely across interior parts of Australia. We're now moving into October, and make sure you do mark in your calendars, because on Tuesday the 1st of October we'll be releasing the second iteration of the Big Wet forecast. I've got some pretty major changes in that, in all fairness. We got West Australia's forecast pretty much bang on with the early rainfall onset arrival, but we have made some pretty major changes to rainfall accumulations for Queensland. Certainly something that you want to be sticking around for. That's just a bit of a plug for that. Back to Western Australia, we do have some thunderstorms also expected to fire up sometime next week, and again the forecast does become pretty messy by Wednesday. Got another cold front sweeping up on Wednesday, expected to impact the southwest. This one does look quite strong indeed, and I thought cold fronts like this would be more or less done by this time of the year, but it doesn't seem so, and I think this is just a pretty exaggerated weather forecast now from the Eastern Reef. I don't think it's going to pan out like it is being forecasted to right now. And you can see between other forecast models as well, they do have similar systems on the forecast, but it is a pretty different scenario in all fairness. I mean, the Axis G3 is calling for what could be a severe thunderstorm outbreak with a low pressure system over the southwest, but the Axis G3 has a pretty gnarly thunderstorm bias, and as such can get things horribly wrong at times. But yeah, Western Australia might have to be one to watch once again after that rain bomb that swept through. And I would also like to add a lot of comments saying rain bomb's not a meteorology term. Well, neither is gnarly thunderstorms. We're not professionals over here. I don't have a degree in meteorology. I'm just tracking the weather, and I have made some accurate forecasts, and as such, it's my channel. I can use what terminology I feel like. But yeah, this system here, you could almost class it as a rain bomb. Some pretty significant rainfall is expected across the west of Western Australia, potentially 50 to 100 millimetres of the stuff, and for this time of the year, that's huge rainfall accumulations. So we will have have to keep a very close eye on the forecast into the next parts of next week for Western Australia. It looks like it is going to get a little bit wet once again, but I think that might just be the forecast models not really knowing what to make of this weather system here. Apart from that, New South Wales and southeast Queensland, that rainfall event there, first off, make sure you are staying safe. There is going to be some pretty heavy rainfall happening there, but I'm very happy with that forecast, and I think that's exactly how the weather systems are going to pan out. But yeah, that is all from me today. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. Much appreciated as usual. Special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run this show without them. So again, their support is much appreciated. We're nearing in on 20,000 subscribers, a milestone that I would love to hit by the end of this year. So if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. It adds to the total, and it is, again, much appreciated. Any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. That is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.